After a long slog of a week at the lows, it does appear that the market is setting up for a bit of a corrective bounce. With that said, welcome back to EllioTrades channel. I'm your host Krown, and today we're going to go over some things that I'm looking at right now that suggest that short term, coming into this next month of February, there is likely going to be a big bounce at hand. Now, I want to deliberately separate the terminology bounce with reversal. Reversal in this case would mean, of course, full bulls ahead, and that's amazing, and we can start to talk about moon boy targets yet again. But until that actually happens, that is simply hopium. And we'll overlay some major conditions for what would be required for that reversal. But for right now, I do think that the market is very likely setting up for a reprieve after this nice downside. So with that in mind, I should let you know if you're interested in an in-depth Bitcoin analysis daily, I do exactly that on my channel. If you think that might be valuable to your life, well, you can find that in the link in the description below. All right, cool. So let's start off here, as always, with the most important thing to be aware of. In fact, this is the one thing that has kept us safe, essentially suggesting caution is the primary route of action for the last 2.5 months, essentially, ever since Bitcoin specifically lost $63,000. Why is that? Because that is where the daily trend actually reversed. And that, of course, is the global open interest. Anytime that we've seen this get above 13 billion with a B, it has resulted in major downside. As I make sure that my notifications are not going to interrupt this nice little message right now. There we go. And as you'll very likely notice, this has happened several times in the past year, all of them presenting at least 25% downside moves, or corrections you might call them, or crashes if you're more perceptive. And at the maximum, we have seen about a 50% downside move. Ultimately, I do believe that this will come lower over time. Risk still does remain lower as defined by the global open interest chart, but for right now, we can certainly play out a bounce similar to what you saw back on over in December, even before that in the midst of late November as well, on those failed attempts coming into this next month of February. Anyways, on top of that, I also want to show you financing over here for these positions is still and has been consistently against the shorts, meaning that if you are holding a short position on on those peer-to-peer leverage exchanges, which is where most of the business does get done, you're actually paying an average rate over the last the last week actually of about 0.01%, which does add up over time, obviously. And with Bitcoin essentially failing to really have any major continuations lower, those numbers do add up, and again allows for the likelihood of a bounce rather than continuation in the same direction to the downside. Anyways, all of this data, as always, you can find for free on my own application. It is found at app.crowntrading, Krown with K, of course, .net. And we offer up the most free data that I'm aware of in the good old internet lands. Okay, cool. Just make sure that my microphone's recording and working. That's good. All right, so let's get into it right here. Let's start off first with Bitcoin. Bitcoin actually preparing the bounce, looks like right in front of our very face. That is quite nice. But let's overlay some very and clear and tangible criteria for this. As always, I want to differentiate the content on this channel compared to other channels by always talking about validation and invalidation points. Something tangible that essentially allows for an edge, essentially. So where would that be in our current standing for Bitcoin right here? Well, in this case, we do see a daily range going on. In fact, the daily range is actually quite synonymous with even the short-term time frame range. If I go down here with a high of just under $39,000 right here, and a low, of course, at about 34,500. As long as Bitcoin's offsetting between these two regions, I do think that Bitcoin bounce, and by extension a crypto market bounce, is more likely than not. What would validate the next major leg up that we would be looking for to continue that bounce very likely into the middle, maybe even end of February? That would be with even a 4-hour closure, preferably a higher term time frame is going to be better as always, above, let's call it 39,000. If we see a daily closure above there, that would be an excellent next sign and very likely open up the roads for a move somewhere between the shallow $40,000 territory, that being between about $43,000 to $44,000, which is actually in line with the 0.5 Fibonacci retracement right here, a very important one. As long as Bitcoin's living below there, it is, technically long-term, heavily bearish. Doesn't mean that Bitcoin can't come back up and test around there. Of course it can, but that would still be considered a corrective move within the context of, a general daily downtrend. Now, I'm going to offer up some hopium at the end here. As always, I want to be very deliberately clear that with hopium, well, it's hopium until proven otherwise. So here is what's at hand coming into February and, dare I say, maybe even into March as well. And let me just make sure that I get this last high right there. Okay, beautiful, or maybe not so beautiful, depending upon your disposition. But basically, let me get rid of this right here as well. Basically, coming into February, if we get this first condition validated here, again, with a daily, I could even use a 4-hour or a 12-hour closure, again, above about 39,000, a little bit above 39,000 bucks in this case, then I would be looking for a move essentially towards $44,000. This, however, like I did say, is a corrective move because we do have a weekly trend that is now in limbo. The weekly has printed its first lower low since, basically the bear market a couple years ago. And whilst a lower low is of course cause for concern and can be a signal of early reversal, we also need to see a lower high as well. So going back into the daily over here, where would those likely areas be? Essentially, where would your likely bull trap regions be coming off of a major weekly reversal here? Well, let me get my nice little painter's brush out. And assuming Bitcoin does something like this, pops back up above specifically 40,000, or in this case 39,000 and change, we'll do it, and then plays out a move into February, maybe even March, in between the 0.5 and the 618 right here, which is basically between about $44,000 and $48,000. Well, that would be your traditional bull trappy region. So if you do see any sort of weakness into this region coming into, of course, let's say end of Q1 2022, and you do see Bitcoin turn back down, the key critical ingredient, whether this is going to be a real long-term reversal, meaning, we start to talk about Boo Law targets yet again, probably, actionable around end of year if I had to guess, or, maybe sooner than that as well. It's kind of very difficult to time these things. What we expect to see is after that turn down a higher low anywhere above specifically about $40,000. The doomium, however, is that instead of getting a higher low and then, well, of course, coming back above about $50,000, which would be essentially my conditions for a long-term macro reversal and, green skies ahead, right? Or blue skies ahead, or whatever color skies that sounds good to you. Purple skies sounds good as well. Well, the problem is, the other side of it is that if you do see weakness and then Bitcoin specifically come back down below $40,000 and then do a series of this over the course of the following months, maybe even half year, that would be a confirmation of much lower prices in the, perhaps not so, well, perhaps distant future. Probably around end of year if I had to guess, with, in my opinion, a max target down of about $20,000 to $25,000, at least at current glance. Now, I want to give one point of hopium here to the Boo Laws, and that is going to be based off of the 5-day stochastic momentum oscillator. What is this essentially speaking about? It's a higher term time frame, being a 5-day. And it speaks towards, well, momentum. So in this case, I've made this as clear, or hopefully as clean as possible, by putting a nice horizontal green line right here at the 8.62 read. Because we've only seen it come down on this time frame specifically to this number a few times in history, and the results have been rather interesting, might I say. So when was the last time that we saw this far down? That was back on over here. I'm going to get a nice vertical line out and highlight it right there. And of course, there were a few other times over here, one being in October 2014, the other being in January 2015. And if we go even further back than that, towards the genesis, October 2011. So I want to first state that this is hopium. We have not seen this cross the upside just yet, but I do want to show you what the other results in the past have been. There's been 4 other iterations being this slow. One of them, or the most recent one, was the December 2018 3100 macro cycle low. Obviously, it took months and months to play out to the upside afterwards, but that was the macro cycle low. The time before that was your January 2015 macro cycle low. And of course, again, it took months after that for it to even get going back up, not even to the all-time high, but just even getting some upwards, momentum in this case. The time before that, however, was a bull trap right here. And this one, whilst it did play up from wick to wick in this case, about 72%, it eventually did get eaten up. So that would, again, represent sort of the more bearish case. And I can create a much stronger bearish case as well, but I don't think we'll do it in this video. I think it'll be more relevant to talk about some other altcoins perhaps. And we can also see the final iteration of this is from October 2011 on this macro cycle low from the Genesis. Now, going back to our current iteration of this potential signal, this will not be defined today, actually. This will be closing in basically on Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 00 UTC. And if Bitcoin is trading above 35,615 at that time, we will see it officially cross the upside for the first time basically since the summer run, actually. So that is rather pertinent, might I say. All right, cool. So we've gotten through all of that. Nice and fun stuff. I didn't talk about invalidation of a short-term bounce. Well, basically, the bounce has not been really validated to begin with here, obviously. But what would essentially validate a downside move first before any sort of a bounce like this could potentially play out? Well, that would be actually very cleanly here below 34,500. Below there on a daily closure, very likely Bitcoin sees somewhere between about $29,000 to $31,000 first before any sort of another bounce attempt. All right, cool. So we've gotten through that. Let's see, what would the relevant regions be on something like Ethereum? I know a lot of people are very interested in this for a good reason, of course. Let's throw it on right here. I think I've already done some nice Picasso drawings already. And basically, it's the same setup overall, right? If Bitcoin's going to bounce, very likely everything else bounces alongside with it. As you likely know, this market essentially moves together. And for Ethereum, where would your traditional bull trappy regions be, assuming that Bitcoin gets its new bounce, which for Ethereum would be initiated and confirmed with a daily closure above 2720 specifically. I would be looking for targets higher, somewhere between about 2920 to 3300. However, again, that would be your proverbial potential bull trap region if this market does turn out to be macro bearish. And you'll know that as a confirmation by coming back down below 2750 in this case, or sorry, 2750 is what I'm trying to say. Confirmation of a macro bull would be setting a higher low above that 2700 number and then pushing its way through 3300 specifically. To move on to, how about AVAX? I haven't even made a chart for this one in a while. It's my girlfriend sneezing in the background. Forgive her, or bless you. Bless you, sir. Anyways, for AVAX right here, very simple one as well. Where is your greater bounce initiated? Back above 73.5. Above there, I do look for corrective bounces to bring price action back up somewhere around and between $88 to $100 actually. And that is the big area of interest right there. Obviously invalidation and downside first before below about 53.25 with targets down very likely into the deep 40s, the low 40s that is. Anyways, let's check out a few more. Trying to think of another interesting one or one that people typically look at. Maybe Solana would be one. Yes, same thing right here. Very simple chart. 104 to the upside, validation of a major bounce very likely in progress with targets over time between 130 to 140 to 160 to 170 region actually. Above 170, long-term macro bullish. Until then, bounces are, again, still corrective within the context of the current trend, which is, again, to the downside. And there are several things which maybe we'll cover up on another video, going a little bit deeper into the downside. Now, I don't really want to wear out my welcome here as we're already 14 minutes into this video. I want to make this video nice and digestible, so I think we'll leave it right there. Again, be aware of, it's just easy to watch Bitcoin, but just be aware of where the obvious areas are in Bitcoin. Above 39, good. Below 34.5, bad. And I think that will essentially wrap it up for right now. And as always, I want to wish you well. I want to wish you the best, as we say. And oh yeah, check out the good old links in the description below as well. I think that's a good place for me to sign off. I'll be back on Monday. Take care, and until next time.